Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the Western Hemisphere. We're all set for the next edition of Coaching Matters. And we're looking at basically, are you prepared to win? We're looking at the idea of preparation, the kind of work and thought that goes into that. And we have three world-class authorities in this area to be chaired by Jim Radcliffe, to be chaired by Richie Mercado. My name is Frank Dick, the chair currently of the Global Athletics Coaching Academy. It's my, I'm really delighted to welcome you all. I understand that over 60 people have registered to be here. I hope you're all here tonight this morning. And so without any further ado, let me go over to Richie and he'll introduce the team.
Thanks, Frank. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I know we've got people all over. We're excited for this Western Forum of Coaching Matters. One thing that's great, I was trying to get an old friend of mine in Canada, and she said, "Here's the person you need to have." And I believe I'd met Kim somewhere along the road. Kim is based out of Calgary, but has been a throws coach, speed power development coach. Uh, Working with not only as others on here with bobsled and other winter sports as well for speed and power, but she is also now sort of the supreme para coach for Canada, working with Athletics Canada and having a great success there. And as she has said, it sort of opened her eyes to the new world of athletics and coaching and preparation, and that's become her passion. So we're glad to have Kim on here. We also have Fernando Oliva. I got to spend a day with Fernando in Belgium this summer, which was a treat. I've known him for a few years. A wonderful coach from Argentina originally, schooled in Argentina and in Belgium. He is an elite coach and the coach for the combined events and jumps in Belgium. Had tremendous success with lots of athletes, especially Noor Wits, who he has coached for several years now. And Fernando does a wonderful job of preparation and of presentation all over the world. We also have Jim Radcliffe, who I was lucky enough to meet when he came to one of our NACAC track and field coaching congresses years ago, somewhere in the Caribbean. And he came to learn about track and field and about developing speed and power and those things. And mainly for football, back at the time, he's been the strength and conditioning coach at Oregon since 1986. But he has also become a tremendous track and field coach, developing track and field athletes at the national and international level and the Olympic and world championship level. Uh, and every time I watch Oregon play, they always show him on the sideline. And now they mention, here's the reason they're so fast. They have speed, they have power, they're prepared. And he crossed over both sports to improve both of them at the NCAA level and at the world level. So we're happy to have all three of you on here. And the topic, of course, is preparation. And Frank and I talked about this with other people in GACA a few months ago. And I said, one thing that's happened is now we have such a crammed schedule. There are no breaks. Athletes have to make money. Agents need to put them in things. There are no breaks from international and national competitions anymore. And the one time we did have the break, what happened when people could finally start getting ready in track and field, not even knowing where it was going after COVID? They didn't have access to tracks necessarily. They didn't have access to weight rooms. They didn't have access to specific equipment. So there was a tremendous amount of general preparation over a long period with no one knowing where it was going. And then when things did open up, they went into more specific training and there were tremendous results after that. For one thing, the freshness of not overcompeting, but also getting back to the basics of preparation. And that kind of sparked the notion of this is really how do you prepare for 1 year, for 4 years and beyond with the limitations of the program, the limitations of competition, the limitations of the length of your athletes. So we're going to start with Kim. And what we'll do here is have Kim and Fernando and then Jim give their presentation of some things. And then we're going to stick with Jim a little bit on some of it because he's got another conflict to go to. So Kim, if you want to go ahead and share yours.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'll just start by sharing. So if we can just hold on for a second.
We've had to develop our technological skills the last few years.
It's always a bit tricky, isn't it? All right. Okay, can you see this?
Yep.
Okay, perfect, perfect. And so I answered this in two kind of areas where I talked about getting the athletes ready, and again for multiple games, multiple opportunities, and things that just are really base core for things that we need to consider when we're thinking about athletes and developing them. And then I talk about the financial piece, and about what that can look like and where that goes. And so I'm just trying to make sure we can go in. So the most important piece, of course, as you know, is consistent training. So the year-over-year continuity is the number one predictor of performance. And so you, as the coach, understand that everything that you do every day is the most important piece of what's going to happen to your athlete's outcome at the very end of the story. You're trying to avoid excessive interruptions in training loads. You're trying to do progressive training gradually. Again, people sometimes forget and they want to jump in really quickly. I really suggest, and as you know, some very famous sayings are like slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And so for me, power speed development has been my foresight of all the things that I get to work with in the many different sports and with many different countries. And this is a model that we keep because athletes, as you know, are the hungriest always, and they want to move ahead as quickly as possible. But so for us, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. The quality coaching piece, the clear communication, individual planning, and evidence-based progressions.
Hey, Kim, I
Yeah.
apologize, Kim. It has a best performance chart up here. This wasn't your slides you had.
No. Oh, it has best
Is that what it's
performance.
supposed to be showing? This
No,
best
right now it
performance?
should show consistent training plus quality coach.
No, it doesn't have your slides up here.
Oh, okay. It's
It's got a
okay. So,
best performance chart swimming coach taper planner.
oh, no, that's not it. That's
Well, that's why I
definitely.
was curious, but I wanted to
Yeah, you're
wait
just like,
because
no, we're not talking about swimming. No, I
that's all
definitely
right.
want to talk about.
They're all
Uh,
interrelated.
yeah, exactly. Well, they are actually. Yeah, I'm trying to do some swimming stuff right now as well. Okay, so sorry everybody. I thought I was on the right way. I'll go back to I'll go back to this. Does anybody else want to go ahead while I organize my business, or people are okay here? Can you see? Are you looking at this now? Are you prepared to win?
Oh,
It's
no,
not up there
we're
yet.
looking at you, kid. We're
You're
looking at
looking at
you.
it. Oh, thank you, thank you. That's very nice. Okay, but I really do want this. Okay, so yes, I apologize for this. Okay, and so it's telling me that it's sharing on my side, but you're telling me that it's not.
Yeah.
So I'll just go back to trying to get that, trying to get that in. Yeah. Hmm. If you can give me a little bit of time, maybe someone else can jump ahead and
Yeah.
then I'll organize my stuff. I apologize
Jim
for
or
shifting
Jim,
that.
why don't you go ahead
Yeah.
Yeah.
and then we'll get Fernando.
Okay, and you guys already have my slides.
Do you want to share them or do you want me to share them?
You can share them, that's fine. Or I can, either way.
Yeah. I think you guys have my slides as well. And so if you guys share my slides, maybe that would be a bit better from my side as well.
I'm glad other guys have problems with technology. It's the bane of my life.
It is the bane of my existence.
Uh, so here I'm going to open Google Slides and I'll go to share.
Yeah, we're coming. We're coming.
All
Beijing.
right. So, like we've been talking about, when I first got started into really preparing people for major international competitions like the Olympic Games, it was about 2006. And I was still working with college athletes, but most of them, we weren't preparing them for anything like this. Did have some professionals. So first time out, it was a 2-year plan. And so the need to do's were have healthy progression, especially through core strength development, postural control, and then be very consistent and continuous, as Kim already mentioned, in terms of overall development of how fast we wanted to be. It was mostly working with middle distance runners. London was the same thing, except now we finally had a 4-year plan. So we could take a recovery year. We had some we had some world championships that were helpful and things like that, but it was things where we could refresh and reboot, regenerate, and then get into more of the process of getting stronger and faster and more in control. But again, it could be a slow and continuous and really relative process to, again, being great at world championships and Olympic Games. Then when we got to Rio, that was the first time that I had 2 different plans. There was a 4-year plan of a professional plan of attack, which again was have a regeneration time, a rebooting time, and then just preparing to use progressions to get us through an A standard and then being able to compete at our trials and things like that. The collegiate plan was different. It was competing all the time. It was managing, being indoors and outdoors and competing at indoor conference championships and national championships and outdoor conference championships and national championships. And then, oh, by the way, you're qualified and have a possibility to maybe compete in the Olympic Games, so that we have an Olympic trials, and away we go from there. And it was nice for me to see and have to deal with both plans of attack, because both ended up being fairly successful with the groups that we had. Obviously, talent has a lot to do with it, but the idea of, again, how do you manage both kinds of conditions? If you'll go to the next slide, then we get into preparing for Tokyo. Again, it was still fairly simple because there was a couple of world championships along the way in a 4-year plan. And even though we were preparing for 4 years, as was mentioned, it ended up becoming a 5-year plan. So we had to not just recover and regenerate, but we had to work multi-peaking, not only through the world championships and Diamond League meets and things like that, but also through a pandemic in this extended year. So then the progression had to also work via correspondence. I couldn't see them every day. They weren't coming to the same gymnasium, or we were working out of garages and out on parks and fields and things like that. And some of it had to be, via FaceTime or that type of thing. And so it was a whole different re-estimation of when we took breaks and how we worked our recovery phases and things like that. As we now keep moving forward, you can go to the next slide. Then we only had a 3-year plan to work for Paris. And we had world championships each year leading into that. Plus, there's all this increased emphasis, as Frank talked about, in getting point status in world athletics, Diamond League deals, and the compensation. All these people are now, even from the college level, are getting appearance fees, or they're getting some money if they show up and do these different kinds of events from all over. So now, as Richie mentioned, it's more like a college plan, because people need to compete in order to, be compensated and keep getting a point status. So, and again, as Kim mentioned, it's the emphasis, the need to do's versus the nice to do's. The need to do's are be within the context of what we're preparing for, having consistency in doing that, and a continual process. And obviously, if we're going to make errors, we need to make errors where we undertrain instead of overtrain, so that we can keep getting them to the line each time and use those competitions as a part of training. Next slide, please. Yeah. So for me, it's always been about simplifying the steps. What are the need to do's, and how can we continuous and consistently work those need to do's? So it used to be just let's keep working to get our A standards, and we could do it through 3 simple steps: some national or European or Commonwealth championships, or then world championships, and maybe some other high performance meets. But now, like a great number of the athletes that I worked with coming out of Paris, they didn't have fantastic contracts, shoe contracts, or things like that. So anytime they could go to a meet and earn a little bit of money, they wanted to do that. And so all of a sudden, there's those compensations, and now again, getting world athletics points, a few of the two women intermediate hurdlers that made it to Paris didn't do it so much through qualifying as they did it be getting a lot of world athletic points by going to meet after meet after meet leading up to the Olympic Games. And then all of a sudden their sports federation say, hey, you're high on the points list. We're going to take you. We're going to take you to the Paris. And then like last year, you have all these things, these concepts of a Grand Slam meet. Now, it didn't end up working out as well as everybody wanted it to, especially from the pace standard. But those concepts are going to continue to be around, I believe. And so we have to factor that in because had several athletes that even skipped doing some Diamond League meets so they could make more money at a Grand Slam meet. So again, some of those are not necessarily decisions to be made in terms of what's best to compete at the World Championships or Olympic Games, but for those athletes, it was the best decision for having a livelihood and taking care of their families and things like that. I think that's it for my spiel.
All right. Well,
Very
thank you.
good.
Fernando, if you want to go ahead and go through your slides, and then we'll get to Kim and we'll start talking around all these points.
See this? You can see these slides?
Yes.
Mhm.
Right. Is the title of this presentation of this coaching model was speaking about prepare to win and also about preparation. And because I am involved with combined events and champs like Richie told, in combined events, the difference is the opportunities to compete are less than other events. That's why preparation is taking a big role, and especially in um, tapering for the competition, because you really have to pick to one competition to qualify to somewhere, and after trying to be into the 24 first guy to make the championship. Uh, Also to qualify for those events, World Championship, in our case, also European Championship or Olympic Games, we have the meetings like GOTSIS or Talents. Those meetings only accept people with certain level. That's make that for the second layer of athletes. I mean, athletes at the sub top is almost impossible to get at the top. We have the less competitions, less opportunity, and the task of the coach is really very accurate and try to find let's say the unique way for each athlete to be in the best shape at the moment that they have to perform. With champs is different. You can do it with more frequently or more competitions and different levels. But also it's very tight the amount athletes accepting in the high level competition. I discovered the last year that the difference of the really separator between the athletes making succeed at high level and those not is the athletes that are really able and capable to express themselves in a high level of arousal. It's mean the context is increasing, the complexity are increasing, but they are able to have an not an stable performance in an adaptable situation. That's why when you read what is needed to perform in a competition at high level, um, are those things that you are going to put into the program to prepare them to be ready to perform and to win. Um, my way to do it is coaching the positive weight athletes. And like you see in this picture, I not only coach athletes, I also coach winter sporters. It's mean that yes, the variability of the way to be in those sports are very different, but the approach to them is very similar. because you have to be with human, and they are those one performing in into the athletic role. I took this phrase from Frank. He has a lot of phrases, quotes. Athletes make excellent happen, but coaches make excellent possible. And my way to do it is in a positive way, coaching them to let them understand then what really it's winning. Uh, when you think that you are doing things well, you can make the mistake to forget what is going to be the next steps. And for me, you have to define what really is winning. Sometimes winning is qualifying, sometimes it's winning, not really being the first between all the competitors. Sometimes it's a personal record, sometimes it's, yes, over coming after of making a big comeback after a big injury. You have to define winning in different way. Uh, when you are working with athletes, analyzing what are doing the best in the world, just trying to find the gap between what they are doing the best and what you are doing with the athletes working with you. It's important to see which different are really present in this way. Sometimes it's physicality, sometimes it's technically, sometimes it's lifestyles or financials or facilities. But what you cannot do it is just expecting with a less effort than the best in the world, trying to win from them. Also, at the moment that when you define the goals, you have to understand that you have three times goal. The outcomes is the winning the medal. The performance is some in combined event is you have to achieve certain amount of point to yes to stay on podium. But you have also process goal. How many training you have to do, which method you are going to utilize, how many trainings camp, and those goals are those one that you as coach can make an influence. You cannot make influence in control winning or of control the medal because you never know what the opposition are going to do of the competition. As a coach and athlete have the big responsibility because you are always under pressure. Expecting from you results, expecting from you medals, government providing support to the athlete, to coaches, and taking this responsibility is a big part of us. That's why my idea to coach is also have the ability as a coach to remain for yourself certain stability in your mind and to support all the pressure that are coming with the main championship. Also, the way to control performance, I love to do an analysis of let's say an evaluation before the championship. Because before the championship, you are really getting honest outcomes. You can analyze all the process until there, and after the championship, you can do the evaluation again and see the difference. To compete, you have to be prepared. Competition is fun if you are prepared, and preparation is a long term to define. Is I think in 90 minutes not going to be the time, have the time to speak specifically about all the things involving preparation. But if you are not prepared, you have to understand that you are going to be exposure to the wall, and if you are not looking good, the arena can be a real cruel place to be. Accepting in high performance that you can not doing alone. All the people working or trying to put into the coach athlete relationship and bringing the best that they can lead to have a team with a lot of difference. And I think that for us as coach, as leader of the process, we have to accept those difference um, and embrace the different because as much that the team diverse is, as stronger that the team can be. I have a philosophy to coach high performance athletes, and I think that to create a culture To create a high performance culture, you need to think in a high performance level. And I mean that you have to know yourself and let the athletes know their self and being aware about what they are capable to do. And try to avoid to have judgment from the others, accept the role as coach, as athlete, as medicine staff, as a federation, and so on. And try to enjoy it. Richie spoke about the pandemic, Corona, and at the moment, people were really unlucky to don't being able to go to train or compete. Nowadays, we are really used to do it, don't put in more attention on that. But at the time, we're happy to have the competition of the possibility to train. That's why nowadays, when you really try to influence athletes, let them understand that they have, yeah, they have to be happy and grateful to have the possibility to have the talent and to have those competition to compete and the possibility to win. And it's very important to determine the values because those values, putting together with the goals and putting together with the competition and winning, making a strong, really strong goal for all the system. Not really the system athlete coach, but really the program, or the performance program of the athlete. For me, preparing means athletes mean that I need to influence them, not only the body but also the mind, because the way that I utilize to coach people is I follow 100% sports science. I need to have evidence. Everything that I put on paper is have to be one guarantee that is proof of have some really serious validity. Also, I try to teach them to the way that they have to think in competition and in preparation, the mental mastery. And I also create a profile of the athletes. At the beginning, I do a pre-research. I try to put in different categories. Are people introvert, extrovert, how they take decisions, how they collect information. I try to understand them and I show empathy and try to, to, to understand them from the way that they can tell me what they see that they are good in what. And try to create a connection, especially speaking about those strengths and asking them why they are doing what they do. When they identify what they are doing, high performing and competing to win, is more strong than just doing by doing. Um, I give them freedom. I try to create autonomy because on big stadium with 80,000 spectators, they have to do alone. It's not the coach solving the problem. They are alone there. You have to prepare them. And I try to formalize with very frequently debriefing for the training process. And I took this one from Frank because it's one of the quote that I love it. And to achieve sustain excellent, build a culture with a support excellent, create process that make excellent possible, and develop people commit to making excellent happens. This topic today really was challenging for me because yes, I am evolved into the preparation period now, but I understood with the ear that you are always preparing. You are competing, preparing for the preparation, for the pre-app, from revalidation for some injuries, recovery, competition preparation, uh, after competition, decompression. You have a lot of situation what you as coach have to try to lead, guide athletes and facilitate them to continue those preparation. And winning is uh, is always like I said at the beginning, it's not only just winning the medal, it's more deeply than that.
Right.
Great, well done.
Thank you, Fernando. Okay, and Kim, I apologize. In the interest of time, we're going to ask some questions of all three of you and let Jim speak some about his, and all of you chime in. And then when Jim has to go away, we'll get you up there and get your slides, and then we'll go on.
Sure.
We'll have plenty of time for you and Fernando. So,
Awesome.
um, and this is actually a question for all of you too. Uh, Kim and Fernando, I know Kim, there a lot of Canadian athletes are in the NCAA system, but you all don't always deal with the same situation that Jim has in terms of the added, you've got all these competitions before you even look at the preparation for the summer. I mean, you've got, into the second weekend of June, you're competing in a long competition season before you even start preparing for July, August, and September. Um, have you found that in with Canadian athletes that are in NCAA, and how you have to reshift and do back off competition for preparation before international competition?
Right, absolutely. We used to go by, like as coaches education, I think the biggest turn that we've had is like it was a very simple periodization process where you had the one big meet and maybe a little peak, and then you'd kind of go through your year like that. But I think what's happening now in the world, and since I would even suggest, like after coming off of Brazil, Tokyo, into Paris, the shifts because of the challenges with people now making money, athletes having longer seasons, the ability to perform time and time again, close to your personal best or exceeding your personal best has become part of our reality, I think, for track and field especially. And so how you are moving your periodization and your planning within those systems is quite tricky. So to answer your question is like, yes, we have to do many, many meets that are happening for us, whether your athletes are going to meets that have value, they're earning potential, or whether they're trying to gain points now with the new systems of trying to get points in order to get to the larger shows. We have had to adjust our peak planning process where we are trying to have athletes try to meet their, I don't know, getting close to their better performances on a more consistent basis throughout, I would even suggest, almost a 4 month period of time. So it's extremely tricky, but it's possible. And you can see now, especially in the world, that many of our athletes are able to do this time and time again while still trying to balance that financial piece, the point piece, and moving forward from that. So, and that really starts with our NCAA. I want to call them babies. Our newer kids onto the scene. They're learning through the NCAA and the Canadian process of where we have to go early to these meets that count in order for you to move forward. And so it's quite a tricky day.
Well, and that reminds me of Wolfgang Ritzdorf, who unfortunately we lost right at the start of the pandemic or shortly after. But he used to talk about always being within a certain percentage of your best performance all the time, so you could get to that within about 4 weeks. You could retool and get to that if a competition came up. Frank?
Yeah, I'm going to ask a couple of questions to Jim here, but just to pick up on that last point, one of the things that came out of Europe, and actually it happened mostly during the COVID period when there was uncertainty as to when competitions were going to take place. And we came up with this idea in Europe. We said always be 6 weeks ready. In other words, if somebody said the Olympics are going to be 6 weeks' time, can you make the point you said? Make sure you're working at a particular level of platform so that that's going to be possible. So coming back to the nub of this whole business is athletics is now a year-round program. There's no escaping that. It's a year-round program. And a lot of people say, yeah, well, the tennis players do it, so why can't the athletes? Well, hold on a second here. All you have to do in tennis is turn up for a couple of rounds. You've got your money, you can go home. But you cannot get away with that in track and field athletes. You'd better be producing the goods. So how is that possible? And now I want to come back to Jim. The nub of what you were discussing, Jim, is that ultimately it's how we understand recovery that's going to be the real crunch in us moving forward. Bearing in mind that recovery is not just getting over the stress that you've been in, but we know that it's in recovery that you adapt. Adaptation takes place during recovery. And so now in my mind, we've actually got to get really clever at what we could call, I don't know what you call it, constructive or progressive recovery. Your thoughts on that one, Jim?
Well, and like was talked about, the saying that I always like to give to the athletes is the best way to get back into shape is to never really get out of shape. And so used to be like we talked about when you had a 4-year plan and it wasn't full of a world championship every year, both indoors and outdoors, or all these kind of things, and all this Diamond League status. Used to be that when you came off of an Olympic year, you could take some time off. And it was great, both physically and especially mentally. You just get away from the process of preparing to be best, your best, the best in the world, that type of thing. The problem was it with is when they did take up 3 weeks to a month off, then that started a longer, slower progression back into being a top level athlete, competing at an A standard and things like that. So what we've done, and you have to do it with the college kids, so now we can also do it with the people that are going to run in a Fifth Avenue mile or some type of fall competition to make some money, is instead of taking that longer break after a major championship or an Olympics, what we do is we just continue to keep going, but we do a little snippets. You take a week off after the major championship, and then you just have one training session the following week, and then 2 training sessions. And what it does is just it never lets you get completely out of shape, but you do have some mental recovery because you're not on a day-to-day basis of trying to work at all this processing and things like that. And so that's been helpful, especially for the college sport as it goes. And then I work with some really great coaches at the college level who can do a good job of kind of spacing who's going to still be competing after NCAAs. We have a pretty good idea who those people are going to be. So when we make our annual plan, the final thing isn't just the NCAA championship. That's going to be important because that's why we recruited them and that's why we brought them in here. Now you're paying the athletes. So, that's where the money goes, is so they would be the NCAA champion. But we still say, no, that's not the final thing is going to be that world championship or that, a Diamond League type of thing or even the Olympic Games. So that's the goal and objective, and we work backward from there. But again, as mentioned, the process is never really letting them take too much time to get away from that process. But we also give them a plan where they're not constantly at it and they get broken down from the constant at it process.
Can I ask us?
Richie,
Can I jump in with a specific question about a related sport? Jim's team, Oregon, may be playing my team, who they're probably going to obliterate in 3 weeks. They have 3 weeks break, the football team, from the last game to the first game of the playoffs. Do you do a little recovery, refreshing there? But how do you get them rested, recharged, but then sharpened again and keep them sharp for that? Because it's a little similar to what you would do after, nationals, then going to Olympic trials, time-wise.
Right. Well, and last year's football championship showed that every team that was in the top 4 that had a bye, they didn't have to do a play-in to get to the championship. They all lost because they kind of got out of the rhythm of performing. And so that was my point, is we want to give people breaks. We want to recover them. We just don't want to get out of the rhythm of performance.
just one. I think Fernando's got his hand up.
Yes, very good question, Frank. And I remember 2 years ago was Laura Mugli in our IFAC symposium in Italy, who was speaking about fatigue and resting, and that the goal of training is provoke some kind of inflammation, and into the recovery happen the adaptation. But in the preparation period, when you help to recover, you don't give to the body the possibility to recover by themselves, because you are just helping to recovery. The body have to learn recover with the own stuff that they have. But in competition or close to the competition, you start to add some ice therapy, some boots or some massage, thing like that. But no other preparation. You also have to periodize the kind of treatment or strategy to recover. And I full agree with Jim speaking about don't really go out of shape because I discovered the last year, all the athletes they have their own rhythm, let's say.
Yeah.
And with the years you understand how many weeks you need to get some guy really ready to perform. Some athletes need less time, other athletes need more time. But into the training, before I was very classical training. Before I speak 5, 6 years ago, just one peak for the winter, one peak for the summer, and that was all. And really traditional periodization. But I discovered that what I put on paper the last year, I really use maybe 50% on what I'm using. What is more beneficial is try to provoke into the microcycle, into the week, a little speak there. Just make an undulation program into the week is provoking and maintain level all the period than just picking for one of two championships.
Okay, good. Richie, can I just jump in to follow on for both colleagues, and I also like Kim's view on this. One of the things that I learned very painfully was that if you think when we're developing an athlete, we develop them physically, mentally, and emotionally, right? We will have to separate the last two. And turning that the other way around, you actually have to be able to help them recover physically, mentally, and emotionally. And I found this, I said, my lesson, Richie, and I think I've told you this one before, pretty painfully learned in the Rugby World Cup when I was doing strategic consultant with Eddie Jones. And playing the All Blacks in the semi-final was big deal, and I have to say, anybody who watched that will say that England played absolutely out of their skins. It was a brilliant, brilliant game. The next week, it looked as though they hadn't turned up. And this is my lesson. I did not calculate the cost of emotional investment. And how often do we have semi-finalists, Richie, especially in the sprints? Semi-finals and the sprints can run out of the skin in the semi-final, and come the final, where's it gone? So my question to all of you guys, because you're all superstars at the top end, yourself too, Richie, how do you help people to recover emotionally?
I agree completely. I remember, because I was part of the help with you with England Rugby. Yeah, so I remember that completely, and have dealt with that a lot with other team sports as well. With individuals, I think for me it's come down to how are you rehearsing going through rounds, going through semifinals to finals. For some people, they have, some people have done better because they have to do a run-in to even get to the preliminary, and then they do the preliminary to the semi, and then the semi to the final. But oftentimes, they're competing better than people that don't have those extra ones, like we talked about with the football playoff, because there's again a rehearsal component there. Once you start rehearsing, being ready for the next, on to the next, performing for the next, I think it helps them emotionally.
Good.
Then, hey, we just did this fantastic thing. Whew, wow. But wait a minute, you still have one more to go, or two more to go.
That's really good. And particularly, the point was mentioned by Fernando, the real superheroes in life, they manage peaks of arousal that other people can't handle. And this comes back to the whole idea of how do we manage our emotions under pressure, under serious pressure.
And Fernando,
process for me is kind of like, and we talk about it, especially with team sports, but especially, it needs to be talked about more with individuals. You got to handle the highs and the lows.
Yeah.
You don't low, you don't get too low with the poor performances, and you don't get too high with the great performances. You kind of got to have an even keel, and on to the next, on to the next.
Well, Fernando can speak to this more than I, but that's the secret to decathlon and heptathlon.
Yeah.
Because you've got it within a competition, not rounds, not one competition next, not one game next. You've got 30 minutes at times, maybe a little more between a, a subpar event, not a total disaster. You got to get around and get to the next thing, or an event that you do unbelievably in, but that can't mess up the rhythm and the mentality of the next event.
Yes. Maybe I think for me the answer to Frank's question is speaking about metacognition. I mean, try to have a plan to decide in which way you have to think about different things, because we have to understand as coaches, and also let understand to the athlete that we have a brain and we have a mind. The brain, you can touch it. The mind is something, yes, artificial. But the brain, only thing that the brain do is with all the synapses and connections is, yes, only recognize pressure and give energy. And the example are, if you have a lot of pressure and a lot of energy, you are happy, you won the gold medal. But the opposite, if you have less amount of pressure and a less amount of energy, yeah, you are really depressive. You are not good. You are not feeling good. If the pressure is high and the energy is low, you are relaxing. You are doing something very comfortable for you. You are enjoying your time, having vacation. But the opposite, if you are a lot of energy and low amount of pressure, yeah, you are not good. You are angry for something. Yeah, that's what the brain is doing. What the mind recognizes all the emotions and all the thoughts, and the way how we are thinking have a big influence in how we behave, and also how we take decisions, and those behavior leading to the emotion, and those emotions are leading to new thoughts. That's why I understood with the years, at the moment that you can influence the way to think, you can create in the mind of the athlete the competition movie. And athlete can create their own placebo, and in competition recover from the stress, and also try to be very cool at the moment that they have to perform. And it's very important to also periodize this, like the training, because in competition it's going to happen. You have to prepare this. It's very important.
Tim?
Yep, I totally agree with Jim and Fernando. I want to talk about relationship building, first of all, the relationship aspect of coach athlete in a healthy way. And then, as well as the data collection that you have when you do your reflection for building your athletes and what you're trying to get. And so we do this very early on about that emotional, psychological aspect. And then within it, within their weekly process of what they're evaluating themselves. And so to make sure that that's okay for them. So we use a lot of reflection.
All right. Well, thank you. Let's give Jim a last word here because you may have to run soon, and then we'll get to Kim and let her go through her slides.
Frank, I got to go work with some tennis players. So,
Yay!
very grateful and happy to be a part of this. It's a great learning process for me as well. Again, the main points I think in the planning are, what are the need to do's versus the nice to do's. Need to do's come first. The nice to do's are what we can sprinkle on as we go. The big thing is seeing the big picture of a year-round plan, and how we came off of 1 year into the next year, and then keeping the process of rehearsing championship performance, rehearsing victorious outcomes, even in small snippets, as part of the rhythm of the performance as we go. I think those are the need to do's, and keeping the biomechanics we're going where they're supposed to go, and keeping how we negotiate the ground and negotiate the implements and negotiate our minds in terms of that rehearsal.
Cool.
Well, thank you so much, Jim, and go get the tennis players better. Don't get your football team any better. They're already good enough. But we appreciate you being on and understand that.
That's the good news part of it. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Jim.
All right. Thanks, Jim. All right. So, Kim, I am going to go here.
Perfect. Thank you. I tried to get mine up still. It's still not doing it.
No, I've got it right here. This should be it.
Beautiful. Yep,
There
that's
you go.
it. Just started. Perfect. Go to the next one, please. It's awesome. Just like I talked about, and already the gentlemen were already talking about this, consistent training and quality coaching. And that regular feedback and the performance tracking, I really want to suggest that we really have to pay attention to that to ensure that that's happening. And a systematic periodization and the technical teachings that you have, as everybody has talked about. I took on a little bit of a global sense when I was answering the questions that you wanted us to talk about. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So the technical mastery piece is something that we are trying to always work on. Not about just doing the repetition, but we're doing the repetition of the correct patterns, not just the volume. And this all reflects back into that we have to be, slightly peaking in very, very often as comparative to before when we really tried to do one. Regular technical check-ins with video reviews, progressions, technical development, and that it has to stay ahead of the physical development. All of this is really about me trying to think about the power speed aspect of what this is. The physical development, of course, is like in trying to balance the development of preventing injuries. We spend a lot of time trying to prevent the injuries that happens with what's going on. I apologize about my dog. He just had surgery, so he's acting up a little. I apologize to everybody about that. And the long-term athlete development and trying to embed that into the plan. And usually we're going for like a 4-year plan or a year-to-year plan, but we're really looking at the cycles that we're trying to live within. If I could have the next one, please. The pieces that we just started talking about that I put a lot more time into than I did before was the psychological skills and trying to build that into our plan and really working hard to have that into our plan. I'm finding that when our athletes get to the largest stages, and I'm talking about podium, and more specifically, I'm talking about gold, I guess, really, is that I want them to be going in there with that mindset, that building mindset of winning. And being able to achieve a personal best. So, for example, with shot put, being able to achieve a personal best early in the sixth throws, and then having to fight for it again, possibly in the sixth throw. And so we don't hear of that very often because it's extremely hard. But we start talking about the possibilities of how you're going to control your emotional self within this environment to allow these things to happen, that your body's ready to do these things, these actions within that stage, the biggest piece, as well as learning through the psychological skills about how you are resilient. So when are you learning from your mistakes, the adversity, and when you just have the flat days? The competition readiness, the routines are huge for us, the cues, the emotional regulation, as we were just talking about, Frank. It's like it's part of the story of really getting the athletes to that next stage. And if you are keeping this within your planning systems, I really believe that you're able to build this out and be able to learn and understand your athletes. And they can understand themselves, which is the hugest thing. We were talking before, it's like pretty much like Fernando, those athletes are on the stage by themselves. You're in a stadium. I can't even remember how many people had people in Brazil. It's like 40,000 people are there, and your kids on the field doing their thing, and they're trying to do the best that they can. And so helping them grow the mindset and belief in the long term, and also to what they're able to do in the short term. I also like to consider the family system. I use the environment of the athlete, and everybody's environment is so different. But to understand that as a coach, I think helps you to give you that edge for what you need for when things get kind of ugly, and to help with those support systems. So family coaches, the sports science people, the therapists, and the other teammates to help them regulate what's happening within their emotional and their environmental statuses. We're very clear about the communication and our aligned values, and we want to create the most stable environment where the athlete feels valued and supported, and where also the athlete is valuing and supporting and creating their environment to ensure that anybody who's training together has this kind of piece. If I can have the next one. So we try to always have a routine, and we're trying to reduce injury as much as possible and to not to have overtraining. And so the proper warm-ups, progressions, the load management, the movement quality and fundamental strengths, trying to avoid the big spikes in volume and intensity, and that gets a little bit later on into our season. We want to try to not go so heavy or so low because we are trying to have those higher peaks, multiple peaks over multiple times over multiple months. And so instead of doing these big kind of, these big developmental pieces, now we're trying to keep it into a little bit smaller pattern so it's easier to control, but we're pretty much we're gyrating at a fairly high intensity for a longer period of time. And then the key again, knowing your athlete, you're able to see the cues and clues, following the data, the things that you're collecting for data, knowing when to back off before the athlete breaks down. Okay. And so the piece that now comes into the world that wasn't as much for me, myself personally, and my athletes that I work with, is talking about this revenue that people are making now in sport and how we have to now consider, or I have to consider quite a bit. It's just like thinking about what's happening about this is a financial aspect now of track and field where athletes are able to gain money from performing. And, there's not a lot of money in track and field. And so, well, for the kids, they're, not top five really. And so it's like I'm actually having to talk about, and we have to do the revenue meets. It's like, what are we trying to do when we're doing our yearly plan and talking about the Continental Tour, the Invitationals, the high value local meets that they could get. And the goal of what they're trying to achieve on the athletic stage equals the earning, the appearance fees, and the bonuses. How do you balance these things? As the coach, you definitely want the best performance at the biggest stage. That's the story of what you want. But how do you do that now with that kind of attraction of financial piece? And so I go through this kind of idea with my athletes and talking about the money meets, the developmental meets. What are we trying to do? Where do we go? The qualification meets that we must go to. That's not a question in our story. And then the peak championship meets. And how do we move that into our peaking cycles? And how do we make sure that we're not like running them dry before we get to the biggest piece of the biggest stage? So if I can just have the next one, please. And so I've tried to be cycling into wave patterns, and this is really only my actual third year of trying to do this because money hasn't been such a big generator for us, until it's becoming more and more, and the different athletes that I get to work with. And so I call it a wave pattern that I'm trying to have so that we can have probably a 6 to 7 opportunity for them to make money, but also focusing on our biggest event, whether it's Olympic, Paralympics, Worlds, Para Worlds, whatever that looks like, where we have high load training and then median load tapering. And then they go to a compete and earn and then return back to the cycle. And so this keeps the opportunities available for year round without compromising the training foundation. And so I'm still gathering quite a bit of data, and people are still trying to work within this space. But this is what I'm working with right now, is trying to consistently have this wave pattern where we stay at a certain level, and then keep on moving in and out, and to try to make sure this compete and earn piece is getting respected and not left behind. And so the mini peaks are pretty much every 6 to 8 weeks. And I'm not fully tapering them out. That's not happening. And so the mini peaks still allow for sharpness. It's just what the other guys were talking about. It's like still allows for technical readiness. And I'm trying to have earnings without sacrificing the main championship peak. And this comes at the beginning of the year when we talk about what the plan is with the athlete. And it's like our team, our coaching team. It's like we're very clear about this is the no matter what we're getting to go to gain for this. And so this part is like where track and field is now becoming more of a business than it has before, again, from my point of view. And so now we have to consider these things that, before I would not pay attention to these things as much and just keep on going with, we need to do this because we want to make sure that your championship is the best possible performance at the biggest possible event. But now with the aspect of having money, there's a piece into that, as well as the points that athletes need to gain. So there's a number of things that are coming into play as we are coaching and developing, that it's just not simply about, the taper, the load, the taper, and the repeat. And so it's a bit tricky. And so the best thing is like you choose events wisely. You need to preserve and respect recovery. Recovery is the number one. As you said, adaptation happens within recovery. I absolutely 100% am a believer in that. In the part of this that I want to talk about too, we want to avoid the unnecessary meets. You know, when you talk to your athletes, you probably want to do everything, every shiny penny that they can possibly get. They want to earn them under some pressure, and we want to tune before the major games. And the black and white is, if it doesn't support the plan, the athlete's not attending it. If the athlete is not in the plan of what we want, we're not going to do it. We want to preserve recovery and burnout. That really is the highlight of what I'm trying to do. But I also have to recall and remember, and the things that have caught me in the past is the travel stress piece, that having to fly, and then you're in Europe for multiple times, and then you have to fly to someplace else, like maybe China. It really does add on to what's happening to the physiological aspect of the athlete. Some athletes are great with travel and they're able to deal with it and have a plan, a routine, focus. We have a lot of great travel, how to reduce stress and travel, and how to reduce recovery, and flying first class, like things like this, tricks and tips to help your athletes transition into these other spaces. But it's major. Sleep disruption, the emotional fatigue piece is a major piece, and the nervous system is because we want to make sure we're respecting these pieces. So as we're planning out the year of what's happening for the year and where they're going to go and why they're going to go there, the travel stress, the sleep, the emotional stuff is paramount into what we're doing. And so when I think about this and when we talk about this and we see the athlete readiness and the adjustment, I'm always using tools. Like there's always technical tools for me to use. And it could be simple, there's lab things that we do on the ground. It's simple things that we don't have to go too much into when we're doing our testing and adjustments. The questionnaires that I have, it's a weekly questionnaire that athletes do. The session reps, the jump tests, the strength markers, these small mini tests that are really valid and reliable, and I can do them wherever I am in the world. It helps me to reflect on where the athlete is now, where the athlete was last week, to help me make sure that we are on the same track. I'm sure all of you do this, and we've had this as part of our base to helping it build. This then allows me to make sure, are we going to the meet? Are we going to pull out? And that is always a consideration and discussion with the athlete. We're going to go to perform, but we're not chasing a personal best. And how many opportunities are we doing? Are we going to race one event? Are we going to compete in 2 events? What this looks like. And then you get to choose depending on where you are in your season. And so when I select the competitions and we talk to the athletes about what it is, the ranking points are a major piece, making sure that we have what we need for Team Canada to ensure that international piece, that placement, the ranking points of the world, the quality of the field that we're going to go to, the travel and recovery aspects, what's the demand on the athlete. And again, different athletes will have different travel and recovery demands. I have athletes that I'm working with in Canada, athletes I work with in Australia, and the two different, there's quite a substantial difference about the meets that they can go to or not go to. The financial return for the athlete, education opportunities of what we do, having athletes get into the classification system and what that costs them and how they move on, and also as well as just thinking about the negative impact to the positive, we're going to not attend if that is something that we cannot do. So there's a lot of things to think about, and just I want to give you kind of the overall range of those things. The other piece, which is also, I want to say sometimes my biggest bane of existence, is talking with agents and sponsors. They want these people all the time. They want them no matter what. They'll fly them in one day before or hours before the event, and then they're like, "You're done, thank you." And I understand it's a business, but it kills me because, it's the people are more than this, and sometimes it can be a little bit crazy. But when we talk with agents and sponsors, and we really try to develop a relationship with those guys, because it's important that we're all, the team around the athlete, the business around the athlete, know, and that the athlete is assured and is very clear about what's happening for the biggest opportunity for them to compete. And so making sure that everybody understands about the peak performance dates, that's really number one. The meet availability windows, I will be very clear about when we have the opportunity to compete and why that would be. And then the agents work within that. We've had a few people that have not chosen to do that, but then they're no longer in our space, because you have to find a team that can work together. And the team that works together towards the athlete's best output is the team that's going to be able to have the best success. And then also 2 things that may not come up yet, that may not know, it's but when the periods are where the income can occur. The agents often push hard for earnings, and coaches and other staff, I really feel, have to protect the athletes. And to create a shared calendar that all parties sign off early days, it helps you go back to that when you're in those discussions, especially when the athlete's like, listen, I could earn another $10,000 here if I do this, but it's not in our plan. We get to go back to that original document and go, we agreed upon this, help me understand more. And it's a discussion about where this goes. I find that I try to use the early and late season for the earnings. And so many athletes make the most money in the early seasons. For us, it can be May and June. They're pretty fresh. Also within the planning, this is a reasonable time for me because we are working at a fairly good rate where they can give out. And then late season, the August, September, and again, depending on when the Olympics, Paralympics, that kind of stuff, where they can go after the event, and because there's bonus appearance fees and stuff. I really try to keep the mid-season July controlled and the championship peak controlled. It's very controlled inside the space of what we try to do. So just again, some global aspects of what that is. The biggest bottom line to me is like athletes may need the money. They're always going to need the money. But if the plan jeopardizes the biggest thing that you have, the biggest event that you want to compete on, the best, it's like we're not going to do it. And it's always okay. Does this meet help or hurt the major championship performance? That's always a reflection that we have. And if it hurts, we just decline it, even if the money is attractive. And the money is always attractive to track and field athletes. And so those are sometimes the discussions. But the earlier on that you have the discussions, the better that these later discussions will come into play. You won't have too many surprises when your athletes start going and having these opportunities to earn money for track.
Kim, that's brilliant. Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you.
So a question here, and I know a lot of coaches in other events who don't deal with the throws probably look at the throws and think, well, you're just throwing. You could compete every week all year round. Who cares? Which obviously is not the case. But you obviously can do more early season and late earning things with elite throwers, with travel. You can do that more often than on the other end of the spectrum, Fernando, with heptathletes, decathletes, which not only limits the time you can compete, but in the old world in the States, we try to get some opportunities for decathletes, heptathletes in individual events and competitions. Well, that was hard, but now it's practically impossible, and you're not going to get points for anything as an individual event athlete. So you've got the limited combined events competitions, and sometimes they're not scheduled with enough rest, or sometimes they're scheduled too much. So both of you, I mean, you're on opposite ends of the spectrum there. How do you deal with that?
Is a question for me, Richie?
You can respond to, I mean, you obviously, there are not as many
Yeah,
earning opportunities as Kim's
yeah,
talking about. You
yeah,
can't compete in a heptathlon every weekend.
yeah. Yeah, first of all, the brilliant presentation, Kim. Thank you very much. You put on paper a lot of things, a lot of thoughts, and especially for me was very clear. Yeah, the partnership that you create with athletes, because all the stuff that you were speaking, especially the last 3 or 4 slides, all the things that you have to consider before to take a decision to compete or not compete, and don't losing the the main goal is the major championship, um, leads to the communication role between athletes and coaches. At the beginning of the career, you coach, we have to, yeah, the athletes listen more to the coach, but when they are adults, relationship change because they come with the needs, they come with the financial question, and coming back to Richard's question, yes, it's very you know, when you select athletes in combined event, when you start to work with them, okay, you see at first the physicality, after you see the way to focus and to go with the event, but when they start to understand that so difficult is to gain money to qualify for competition, they start to doubt about, okay, I'm doing the right thing or not, maybe I can put my energy in another sport. And in those conversations, yeah, you're right to do an agreement because if you start to work with one combined event athletes and the goal is to earn money, I say it's not going to happen. Just please choose another sport, and it's tough to, but you have to be serious and honest with them. And you see, combined event athletes, let's say, is more adaptable to those kind of frustrations. Let's say that no more opportunities, no much competitions. But I think that the passion to do this event is so great that is the engine from all the career they are doing. And you as coach, yeah, like I say in my little presentation, you commit to that. You accept the rules. You accept that the sport is in that way. You don't try to change the sport, but you try to change yes, the human part of the athletes from the sport.
This is not directly related to the preparation part, although I guess it does because it means you have something to prepare for, you don't. But each of you are in a situation with the athletes you coach where the future of world athletics support of, how do I put it? The ultimate championships in Budapest do not have combined events, and they do not have all the throws, and they do not have all the jumps because I have my own theory that they're just not as viewable. They don't fit their neat pattern. Um, but that, throws can probably stand alone with some throws competitions. They pulled throws out of the main stadiums at World Championships, Olympics, and it's been a nice highlight. Combined events, you have Gutsis and Talents that could take over some there, but that there's murmurings and hints that these may not all be supported in the future as they have been for over a century. Any views on that or?
Frustration. Lots of frustration that is the possibility of where things are going to be going because of finances. Again, money is ruling the world in many ways, and it's unfortunate because the value of throws and combined events, and I want to also talk about Paralympics. They're just taking and reducing the size of quality, reducing the size of what's happening because of the financial aspect and also the viewership. So the viewership equals the financial aspect, and so that part is very frustrating where you have these incredibly valuable opportunities to watch people compete and the passion for the competition, people that are very passionate about combined events. Guts is like the most amazing possibility of going to see some amazing people and to have and be around this. The people that are loving combined events, you go to this place and it's so hard. It's just the most amazing opportunity, and the throws have this as well with their population and the people that follow them. And so it's unfortunate that the dollars are really closing down some of these opportunities. So frustration is where the best word that I could use with
Well,
that.
and I'll let Frank go, but I'm thinking one of the most exciting televised competitions of any kind with athletics ever was the London World Championship final in the shot put, where
Right.
again, you let them go 6 rounds instead of saying nobody throws well. And the sixth round had like 4 national records, 3 area records, and a world record on and changes. It was pure excitement because they showed it. But
Right.
now they just don't think that fits in like 100 meters or I don't know. Frank?
But I don't think we should be sort of too pessimistic about the future. World Athletics is very aware of the concerns that we all have. I promise you they have. And as I understand it, Richie, there's going to be a coaches commission coming up. And I also understand very strongly that the coaches commission must work with the competition commission to help greater understanding at that level for our future. However, I think Rita Engelbrecht's got a question out there before I ask any more questions on the chat. I think Richie.
I can't pull that up if you can.
Here it says
Well,
active recovery question mark. For example, Rai Benjamin cycles with a professional group of cyclists between 60 and 100 kilometers a day mentally tough but different to 400 meters hurdles, physically also different but challenging. What are your thoughts on that kind of active recovery? I hope we got that right, Rita. I'm just trying to read it from here. Yeah.
Yes, jumping in. Yes, I utilize a lot of active recovery because, I was speaking about the program and periodization, that I don't let the athletes lose the shape. Um, the active recovery, in my idea, is giving the possibility to the athlete to yeah to remain into the process. Also, is proof that when you move in a low manner, is more beneficial than don't doing nothing. Also, nowadays, the injury recovery is no more passive. Is with a lot of exercise. If you have some injury, maybe 10-20% of your body is not capable to train, but you have 80% of your body that is really capable to train, and is so beneficial for the mentally keeping doing things, that active recovery, in my opinion, is much beneficial than don't doing nothing.
So Kim, this really comes back to your point. And I love the idea of the wave, by the way, rushing up the beach and so on. I had a clear picture in my mind. But as it was coming down, at first I thought she's not going to say anything about a recovery wave, but you did. What do you think in terms of active recovery during that rest wave?
Active recovery. So one of my best mentors ever, Les Grammatic, he was the king about recovery and active recovery. And so this is just, you're talking about someone cycling. I'm uncertain about the kilometers of that. I'd be aware of how many kilometers you're going in. But active recovery for us, we always do lots of that. We use the bike, we use the pool. We're doing movement all the time. The active recovery helps us keep into that wave. So we're keeping that, like as Fernando said, we're keeping you fit, we're keeping you in that space. And so, yeah, I love active recovery. It's really part of the story. And, we count that in. When we're counting in all the practices in our daily or weekly cycles, the active recovery is part of that cycle. So the athlete also sees and understands it is just as important as our hardest day, right? Yep. The recovery piece is just as valuable, if not more, than our hardest day of work. Because as you said, Frank, it's like that's where an adaptation occurs, and we're looking for adaptation. It's like adaptation is gold to us, is gold.
So just picking up on one of the sessions that was one of the speakers this morning, he was building in the fact that the foundation for his athlete was gymnastics and Pilates and something that formerly track and field athletes kind of, that's another sport altogether. But I know Rita, I don't know if she's got any other questions coming up from South Africa. But I know she feels very strongly about it, and I know that it's also like the Australian high jumper. She is founded on that, and I wondered, does that stuff come back in again when you're doing your recovery before you come into the cycle again? I mean, can we do things like gymnastics and that kind of basic movement stuff, if you like, to remind the body of its foundation before you then build again? Just a thought.
I like that piece because within active recovery, we get to step away from, like focusing on the technical piece of shot put or getting over that hurdle or whatever that is. We get to go and play, but still get the body ready. So we're also taking care of that emotional, psychological piece where we're not always 100% into focusing on the biggest championship, best performance, right? We can kind of not hide, maybe disguise a little bit about still doing active work towards this thing, but having fun, being able to take a mindful moment, being able to allow the body to just be working at rest and to allow that emotionalness to kind of take a break. A little rest is also that mind rest. And so, yeah, the active recovery too as well does that psychological piece too, if you're doing it, properly. So the athletes are just like, yeah, this can be fun. This can be fun. We don't always have to pick up a shot or, go and run your 800. It's like we get to do this too. And it's working towards the main goal, and it's acceptable and it's good because of all the tools that you have, your reflection tools, your testing tools, they will all suggest moving towards these things. And if you see within your testing, I like to use like a 3 week on, 1 week kind of off. It's a recovery week is really the story. and to be able to monitor what they're saying about their emotional selves within that time frame. And then in the recovery week, even though I asked for a really 1 day of an intensive peak, after that intensive peak, that emotionalness part, it's like it's nice to see that they're coming back with a 5, which is like I feel fantastic, this is awesome. But they've just had 3 days of active work that really don't have too much to do with what's going on, just preservation of body, helping mind get their bodies and minds organized for life, like doing the things that have to balance out so we can get back to like the hardcore stuff later on. So yeah, I really do enjoy the active recovery.
Well, just picking up on that, Richie, you might have been interested. You didn't get a chance to hear the guys this morning, but one of the coaches said that when their athlete is doing the circuit in Europe and so on, 4 weeks there, 6 weeks back home. 4 weeks there, 6 weeks back home, to sort of build in a sense of, if you like, tactical periodization. One final point for those coaches who are not working at your very, very high level. I love the idea of a family of support. I really liked your concept of that, a sense of entourage. But sticking with family, when we're working with younger athletes, to what extent do we actively involve the families in understanding the overall picture that we are trying to achieve with the athletes? Any thoughts on that, guys?
Yes, I have a lot of experience with parents, and I understood with the year that you have to create as a coach a space, a room for them to explain what high performance is, because nobody teach you in which way you have to support your son or daughter becoming an athlete.
Mm-hmm.
They also have to deal with pressures and with expectations, and they are also going to influence the art. That's why you, as coach, have the role to inform them, to guide them, to help them to understand what high performance involve. Um, I think it's very important also to let understand the athletes that the expectation from the parents are not, yeah, their expectations, because they have to be with a free mind when they are going to compete. Don't thinking on all the expectation from all the people, press, parents, supporting federations, is going to lead to, yeah, to saturation of feelings. And think that, yeah, just understanding the roles and explain them. I mean, parents, but also with all athletes when they have a relationship with someone that's not really coming from track and field, to understand the sport is can lead to confusion and to misunderstanding. That's why I think that the coach have to be aware about this and try to put some energy to create an education way to give the parents the knowledge about how can they help the athletes, son or daughter, into the process.
Yes, I totally agree, Fernando. The early days, as a younger coach, I did not include parents as much, and I found that the parents became major problems as we started to move up the ladder into major games, where I didn't really have the time then to talk to them and educate them about why this is moving so quickly. Their child just made World Juniors or something like this, and then it cost my focus to shift to then educate them. And so that was not good. And so I altered that and those learnings early on, where those parents of the younger kids I incorporated into day one. Well, early on, within that first month, really. And then to make sure they understand, like I'll have a parent meeting separate from athlete meeting, and then I'll have an athlete and parent meeting to make sure everybody knows that we're on the same track. And for young kids, I call it our triangle. It's like you, the athlete, me, the coach, and the parent have to be together in order for you to do the best you can. I'm also looking for the parent for nutrition. I'm also looking for the parent for sleep support. I'm looking for the parent to help me with, like what's happening in the emotional state of these kids that sometimes are hormonally fluctuating, boyfriend loss, girlfriend loss. I found that the parents are actually excellent at giving me a quick text going, hey, heads up, this is what happened today. Billy's coming practice like this. I'm like, okay, understood, thank you. And where the athlete may not share that with me as much, in the beginning days, whereas the parents do. And I really appreciate the support from parents that are on side, working towards the goals that they want for their kids as well. And that they have very clear understandings of what my goals are for their children. And so we really try to move forward to give the best opportunities for those kids. And I find that now the parents were a hindrance in the early days of my coaching, but now they're an asset. And so that's the part that I'm like, okay, some of the parents are still tricky. There's tricky people out there, but you adjust and you keep moving forward, and that's okay.
No, but
I'm not sure if there's the same as I know there's some of the same issue in Canada. In the States, for one thing, the interest in getting scholarships to Canadian universities to American universities, but also the whole setting of this program is talking about preparation, especially long-term preparation. And parents oftentimes want to look to the immediate, and they're the gurus out there that if you pay this person, they say they take care of, as people say, they take care of the top 5%. They don't worry about the first 95. Well, unfortunately, if the kid only has about 30% of the first 95, the top 5% won't work. But there's a lot of that, and they're looking for the angle and looking for the thing that'll help their child get the scholarship and get better. And so you have to battle that a lot, as well as the internet and Instagram and all that. And it comes back to preparation, but that's the hard thing. And that's the long term that a lot of the parents and the athletes have to be educated about because they want to know what's happening next week. And they want to do their best every time out when they're young. So.
Richie, some little thing that maybe is an idea that I utilize and helped me a lot was create situation where I let another parents for unsuccessful athletes and all athlete to come to teach them or to explain them in which way they were going with the successful career of their athletes, because it's different when a coach is speaking to the parents than when another parent is speaking to the parents.
Yeah.
It's more empathy. It's worked very good for me at the past.
Okay, Richie, can I very quickly summarize now because we're just about at the end of the show. First of all, congratulations to you, Richie. You pulled together a fantastic panel today. Really, really outstanding. Thank you for that. And I have to say, they were all excellent. No arguments about that. And I'll go through a summary of points. But for you, Kim, I think you, and I could see Fernando nodding all the way through the last three slides that you had there, because you've managed to capture the real world of elite level coaching now. And I think that presentation should be something that every elite coach on the planet should be looking at very carefully to make sure that they get their story right. So very quickly, make sure we get our basics brilliant to give a foundation for healthy progress, core strength, consistent and efficient speed development. That was very much the launching pad for Jimmy. He pointed out the importance of a fusion now between the collegiate or the annual cycle and the 4-year cycle to have this sense of double vision. What's the dream, the big goal? What are the milestones that we have to go through, making sure that all of these things lead to the dream at the end of the day? Big critical focus in our world today. We covered this a number of times about recovery because adaptation takes place during there. And he spoke about context, consistency, and connectivity of process. The new demand that there is now a new demand for order and balance of the multiple priorities that come from federations and all the other things we discussed. Plus, we still, as coaches, must be bound by training principles. So we cannot lose one in order to cover the other. And I think you mentioned that too, Kim, when you were talking about is this for money or is this for our development? Next, we got on to a really good stuff from Fernando. High performance and elite athletes have to be able to manage pressure, and in other words, the peaks of arousal. We've got to know and understand our athletes. What is winning? Make sure that they understand this, because it's not always the gold medal. It can be stepping stones in order to get to where you want to get to. The next point is, what's the result you're looking for? What's the performance that will get you there? What are the components of that performance? And what is the process you're going to use to make the journey? Preparation is about physical, mental, and emotional. And I loved that summary that you gave, Fernando. Influence the mind, stress the body, and finally, wrapped up in your package there was, and I was remembering the words of Bill Sweetenham. We're not trying to create, when you get to your level, coaches, we're not about trying to teach people how to be a better sports car like a Ferrari Testarossa. We're talking about Formula One here. And these are different animals altogether, not only from the athlete side, but from the coach's side as well. So know your purpose, know your people, know yourself, and know your stuff, folks. And a point I think was mentioned about giving ownership. I was corrected in that some time ago by a colleague who said, Frankie, it's not your ownership out there, and responsibility is not yours to give. It's theirs to take. That's a process that we create the system for them to learn how to take ownership. We take our hands off at that point. Next, then we came to. I loved the line that we had. What was it? Power and speed. Slow is smooth, and smooth is fast. I love that. I've written that down. I'm going to use it as my own in the future. Technical development as a foundation first, before the physical. Now, this is really important. Just to elaborate on it slightly for our colleagues here. If you don't have the technical model right, trying to make them stronger or faster is trying to make them stronger or faster at doing the wrong thing. So get the technical model right. Really, really good point. Support, create the right support system, the family. We've already covered that one. Resilience is really important in life. How do we develop resilience in kids who are being encouraged these days to be very risk averse? Don't do this. Don't try that. Don't do this dangerous thing. We actually need how to face risk. Otherwise, we never develop resilience. Injury and overstress risks are reduced by making sure you have a balanced foundation to your training. Review the quality and sorry, there's your different kind of competitions are revenue, qualification, development, and peak. Don't confuse them, but make sure they all have their place. We spoke about the wave pattern. I love that. High to medium to competition to a little bit of recovery, and then back to return to the tough stuff again. And finally, a big one that most coaches really have to get their heads around, because we can too easily forget this. Take account of the travel and travel stresses, damage to sleep, emotional fatigue, and thanks for covering that one today, folks, and damage to the nervous system. Otherwise, we're taking the cement away from the bricks that we're trying to pull together. Richie, thanks very much again. Kim, Fernando, and in the absence of Jimmy, this has been a truly fantastic session. Thank you so much for that, especially to you, Richie, for chairing this and bringing the team together, and also in his absence out there, Jimson, for making sure that the technology was all in place. Thanks again, Richie. Jim.
All right, thank you, Frank, and thank you, Fernando, and Jim is not with us anymore. He did a great job, and Kim, nice getting to know you more in person here. I actually was able to see Les on phone about a week ago, and a friend of James Holder went in there because he's not doing well, but he's been a mentor of mine for 30 years, and so it was good to hear you. Good job for all of you, and keep doing what you're doing, and we'll have more coaching matters to come in the future.
Yeah. Thanks very much again, Richie. Thanks, Jimson. See, you just popped in at the end there. Yeah. Good to see you, mate.
Just listen only mode.
Hey, Kim, really good to meet you. We haven't met before. Really, really pleased. That was outstanding today. And you, Fernando, well, we've known each other for a while.
It was a pleasure, Frank, Richie.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all, and everybody have a great holidays coming up.
Yep.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, folks.
Thanks everybody.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Richie.